from the MCPLive.tv studios, located in downtown Conroe. It's the Conroe Art League, live.
Hello and welcome to Cal Live, the show that brings you what you need to know about the Conroe Art League. We're here to introduce you to our artists one by one so that you can learn about the art, the beautiful pieces that they create, and the talented artists that they are. My name is Marilyn Lowry, and I'm very honored to be here today as your host. I'm also a longtime member of the Conroe Art League, and my guest today is Carol Roach. Carol, we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you very
today.
much. I'm looking forward to our interview.
Sounds great. I can't wait to learn more about what you produce in your art world. I've seen it, and it's very unique and love it. So tell me a little bit, and we'll talk about your background a little bit if you don't mind, Carol. Where are you from?
I'm originally come from Iowa. I'm an Iowa farmer's daughter. My goal in life was not to marry a farmer, which happened. I ended up marrying a lawyer.
That's great.
And I went to University of Iowa and got my first art degree in metalsmithing, of all things, BFA in metalsmithing. Problem is, you can't find too many jobs in metalsmithing.
I imagine you can't.
And I was deeply in love, and so I came to Houston, and my boyfriend at the time was going to U of H in law school, and that's what brought me to Houston, and I got a job working in a fabric store. They were asking for an assistant manager, and I ended up being the manager, and a couple of years later, I got to be the district manager.
Well, wow. That's impressive. And a fabric store. So you weren't working with metal, but you were working with something
fabric.
else you love.
My second love really is fabric.
Right.
I have a room dedicated to fabric at home, and unfortunately own about like 6 or 7 sewing machines, and
that is amazing.
And started sewing when I was 5, making Barbie doll clothes and making furniture, and I just loved fabrics, and I thought I wanted to be a fabric designer at one time, and knew I had to go to New York. I didn't have the money to go to New York, so I went to University of Iowa and got a metalsmithing degree. So then I worked part-time in a fabric store then.
Right.
I really didn't get into I always did art on the side, and as far as doing displays and stuff, my art came out, but I always felt guilty that I wasn't really doing art.
That wasn't art to you?
I always felt, no, I guess I didn't. I just always felt guilty about it, and I really didn't think I could be a manager because I'm dyslexic. Didn't find out till I was in college that I was dyslexic. Always knew I had problems with numbers and letters, and art was always my friend. And
yes.
I remember in 2nd grade they asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, and I drew this picture of an artist, and at that time you always thought of artists with the little French hats. And
the berets.
You know, and I just knew that's the only thing that ever made sense to me, and so I followed my heart. And I know my parents were disappointed, and they wanted me to be a nurse like my sister because that was practical. What are you going to do with art, you know?
So you have, tell me about your family. You grew up in Iowa, and you have a sister?
I have an older sister, an older brother, and we had a small farm. I milked cows and took care of chickens and calves, and had a pony, and had several cats and several dogs, and didn't have any formal friends since I went to kindergarten. My critters were my best friends.
I was going to say, your pets were your friends.
They still are.
Oh, that's wonderful. You still have pets.
I have 4.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's very cool. So your studying has your art been, have you studied art under anyone else, or have you learned it yourself?
When I married my husband and we started going over our overseas assignments, which we went to New Jersey, and then we went to London, and we went to Norway. And after moving 4 times in 5 years and having 2 children, I kind of lost my identity. So when we moved back to the Woodlands in '92, I decided I went to Sam Houston. I went to Sam Houston. I went to University of Houston, and Sam Houston is the only one that would give me a degree in watercolor, because watercolor was something that you could start, you could leave it, your children could play with it. it was just something I could very easily learn to do. So it was actually then I started getting into ceramics. And actually, my funny story with ceramics is I took ceramics for one semester in high school, and actually the only picture I have in my high school graduation book is of me being on the wheel, but I never got one single pot the entire semester. And I thought, man, I can't. You have to know how to throw a pot if you're going to go into ceramics. So when I was in University of Iowa and I'd see the ceramics building, I would say, no, I can't do that.
Not there.
But it wasn't until I went to a women's group and we were playing with clay, and I just remembered how fun it was, and it was just so. It was such a healing medium to be in. And so then when I went to Sam Houston, was taking my classes for watercolor, for every watercolor class, I took a ceramics class. And actually the university got a little upset with me. They said, well, if you were a watercolor, you should be taking printmaking and drawing classes. Why are you doing the ceramics? And it just was so much fun. And it was just so, having 2 kids and a husband and a house, it was so relaxing. And I started actually teaching some of the kids in the neighborhood ceramics. And I would take them to the school and fire them.
Fun.
But when I started painting images on my ceramics, then they said, oh, okay, we understand what you're doing now. I married the 2 pieces together.
There you go. But you had to do it so that they would understand that it was part of what you were learning.
Yes, and so I was very fortunate. I got an MA and an MFA at Sam Houston.
That's great.
And as soon as I got that, I went off to Singapore, and they absolutely loved my pottery, and I was in a gallery there, but they didn't like my watercolors, and they didn't, it's just funny. And then I went off to England. They didn't like my pottery, but they loved my watercolors. So you never know what you're
you
going to pick
don't,
up.
and isn't it wonderful to be able to do different things?
The one thing I always say, if I had been in one solid place, I would be an established artist. But since I've moved around the world, that I picked up something special and met wonderful people and learned Chinese brush painting when I was in Singapore, and was able to teach in my children's school, and I taught from my house.
You've had some wonderful adventures.
I certainly have.
You really have. And I think travel is fabulous. I've always loved traveling myself, and I can certainly see that. And it sounds like you captured the best from each place, and you found the kind of art that worked wherever you were, and you've married all that.
I really have. I've been so fortunate. Even the house in Singapore, usually most people live in the high rises, and my husband always wanted to live in a high rise. And so I remember we had like 3 contracts that fell down, but there was this house that actually had an outdoor kiln and a ceramic studio, because I figured when I left Sam Houston, I wouldn't do ceramics anymore. I just concentrate on my watercolors.
Right.
But here I am, learning how to do ceramics in a foreign country, and had a gas kiln with gas, and had to listen when it changed and changed my little blocks around to fire my pieces.
With all of your knowledge that you have, I just think that's amazing. It really is. And you're a very interesting person, I found from speaking with you before.
Thank you very
and
much.
I enjoyed it very much, because I like to hear about variety in people's work too. And I'm kind of person that gets bored sometimes with things, and I like to change. So it sounds to me like you really enjoy that kind of thing as well.
I didn't think I would enjoy all the travel, and actually I always kind of dreaded it. But once you get into it, you do enjoy. I've met wonderful people around the world, and
I bet you still have friends.
I do. And Facebook and messengers have made all that even easier.
Wow. So, is there any particular artist or that's captured your interest, or have you just, as you've gone to different countries, is there anything there that is?
I've always found special artists. Unfortunately, being dyslexic, I can never remember names or how to spell them, so I'm not very good about remembering things. I remember in college, Mary Cassatt was always one of my favorites. I remember at one time, I was early in my 20s, and I could have bought a drawing from hers, and And I just didn't have the money to do it, and that was one of my biggest regrets. Is I could have bought this little pencil sketch.
Wow.
I know.
I know. That would be something. Really.
I know. One of my regrets in life.
So, what kind of, in your watercolor, what kind of subject matter interests you?
I do a lot of still lifes, and what I did my thesis on was I took a painting and did a one in day light and one in dark, and that was from my Norway experience, experiencing the darkness and the lightness in Norway. That was probably the hardest country I've lived in, just for overcoming the not having any light. I mentioned that December of 1990, I only saw the sun 6 times in December, and that was on between 10:30 and 2:30, and it's just really even hard to get out of your. It's not such a psychological change.
It has to be.
It really is.
It really has.
That really
to
affected my art, and that's really when I started doing more watercolors. And whenever all my travels, I have a little sketchbook, and I'm always sketching in my sketchbook, and I love.
Nice.
You know, I've gone to Rio and painted Jesus, and Big Ben, and I've just been so fortunate of drawing the real thing in front of me.
That is so wonderful, and I'll bet you have some wonderful photographs that you can
I
look back
do.
on now
I certainly do.
and use those in your artwork. And
I don't tend to do that for whatever reason.
Oh,
I always
okay.
think I'm going to, but I never tend to do that. I like to paint things that are in front of me,
Well,
and that's
you
really
go.
what I've always done.
that's great. Have you? You have a studio, I understand, and tell me about that and where you live. And
I'm very
Yeah.
fortunate that when we came back from Dallas in 2009, we were told that we need to live in central Houston, so we bought a house in the Heights, and that's a very artsy community. And
It is.
the house we bought was 3 stories, and my studio was the top. It was the biggest room, was up with the best light, was on the top floor.
top floor.
And so that was a beautiful stereo, great lighting. And then we've always had a little house on Lake Conroe since '92. But when we came back, it was already rented out. So my husband sent me out to go look for a new house. And I walked into this house. It was funny. I was with my original realtor, and we come up to this house, and it's not on the picture that's on the paper. And I said, but I want to see it. But it had just come up that day. They just put it up. It wasn't even on the internet. I walked in and I said, this is my house.
You knew it.
I knew it.
Right away.
I'm very, very blessed. Very, very blessed. And so at that time, we'd come up every weekend, and my husband was just always, the water just always settled him down. Kids boated, and kids from the college would come down at that time. It was a house big enough that I knew that they didn't have to share a bathroom, and the big love of the family was playing pool. So we had the first piece of furniture that was bought and after law school was a pool table. So I must have loved my husband a lot.
There you go. There you go.
So, and I said, I don't have a studio. And he says, okay, we'll build a studio. And so we knocked down the attic, and my whole studio was wood. So I have wood floors, I have wood everywhere, the ceilings and everything. They put skylights in for me. Wish I had a view of the lake, though. That's the only, there's only one little place I could have gotten a view of the lake. But it's a wonderful space. I have a classroom that I can teach in, and I have a room that has 2 throwing wheels and a nice big sink and a little bathroom for me. So
it sounds like
I'm really spoiled.
you are really
I'm
very well
well-loved.
equipped. You can teach, you can enjoy your work, and you told me about the kilns. Then you have a special room for all of your sewing.
I do. I have probably the best thing I ever did is when I first moved to Houston, the sewing machine had to be in our bedroom. And after my boyfriend then found pins in the bed, I've always been able to have my own room. I don't know how that happened, but I was always made. I always got my own room. And actually, Norway, I shared it with my youngest son, my son. Half of it was his nursery, and half of it was my sewing room.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way.
That's right.
That's right. And you always have had room for your pets as well.
Yes.
So you've got your sewing, you've got all of your artwork, your ceramics, your pets, you're on a lake. You've got ceiling lighting. You've got wood all around you. It sounds like you have a wonderful place.
I do.
That's
It's really
great.
magical.
It must be. And you were telling me that you teach classes as well in your home.
Yes. I've always taught something. It started in the Woodlands with kids when I was getting my master's, and a lot of it was also keeping your kids busy.
Right.
After school projects. And then when I went to Singapore, I taught in the Singapore American School. And I also, with having a ceramic studio, I had classes there, and the kids are both into scouts, so we do scout projects, and I
Yes,
had
you
adult
do.
classes and watercolor classes, and it was great. And went to England, and in England I had a sunroom that was connected to the house.
Wow.
The only problem is in the winter it got pretty cold out there, but I had a
Chilly.
little heater, and I'd sit on my little heating pad in the wintertime and to do my art.
Oh, that's awesome.
And luckily, all the electronics I bought in Singapore worked. The 240 worked in England, so that worked out really well.
That's.
I slowed down teaching when I came to the Heights, just because the way the house was designed, you just wasn't able to have classes there.
Exactly.
So it's fun to get back into teaching, and I'm a very intuitive teacher. And I remember I had one student that always used black as an outline for things, and so I took her black paint away from her. and she learned, and she thanked me very much for that.
I remember one time too having when I was in drawing class having my pencil removed and my eraser, and I was given a felt tip marker. And I said, from now on, you'll be drawing with this.
Yes.
So,
yes.
yes.
You see the weaknesses of your students, and
Sure.
luckily I'm very intuitive, and
I can tell.
and I push them and make them better people.
That's good.
Better
I think
artists.
that's wonderful. And art is so healing as well.
It
I know
really
you
is.
told me
It really
that.
is. It really is. It's. I remember in England having a lady. She was from South Africa, and she was living there, and she lost her older son. He was 17. First time he went out drinking, and he drank too much, and he died.
Oh.
And it was in the middle of this class that she started talking about that, and she says, and I can, I'm drawing, and I can hear him laughing at me.
Wow.
And so, it always touches your heart when you hear those wonderful stories.
It does. And everybody has them.
They do.
They really do. So how long have you been a member of the Conroe Art
I
League?
have only been since I came back from Mozambique in 2020. I moved back 2020. Unfortunately, I lost my husband in Mozambique in January 16th of 2020, and when I came back, at least I had a home to come back to, which a lot of times when on these expat assignments, you come back and you have to find a home and you have to do all this stuff. But luckily,
Right.
I had my home to come back to, and so I had a good friend that said, "Hey, why don't you join the Conroe Art League?" And I said, "Well, I've been looking at it." And I remember looking at it in the 90s and thinking, well, I really didn't live up here full time, and but coming back, I've been so impressed at all the wonderful artists and all the classes, and it's just such a very well-run organization.
It is.
I'm really proud to be there.
It is.
I
am
really
too.
enjoy, and I enjoy being the docent, and I enjoy
Right.
trying to sell the art. And,
Right. It's a beautiful place, and the people that are in it are so warm and caring. And I've been a part of a lot of different art organizations in my life, and this is top notch. So I'm glad you're a part
I'm
of it
impressed.
too. I really am.
This is a fantastic way to get to know the artists, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it.
I know, and I'm so glad we do this show too,
Yes.
so that we get to know people,
Yes.
because everybody has a story and they have a history that's so rich. And I think a lot of times when people come and look at the art, they may not know the whole story behind everything. They might know about that one piece, but then they don't get to know the person. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to do that. So tell me about where you show your work. Do you show it other than
I was showing some at 18 Hands Gallery in Houston. Unfortunately, with all the moving I've always done, I've not been very good about showing my work. I always laugh at I tell people you're an artist, and then when people actually see me, they go, "You're a real artist." And my husband goes, "So don't you get frustrated with people doing it?" I said, "No, because art can be any level, And
It can.
it makes me funny when people tell me I'm a real artist.
I know. I know.
It's great. I've started to a face page, and I'm working on getting the bugs out of my website, and
And you built your own website.
well, my daughter helped me with that.
Well,
so,
that's good.
yeah,
That's a challenge.
Yeah, that's a challenge, but I do art. I enjoy art. I enjoy making it. It's always nice to sell, but it's as an artist, you have hot times and cold times.
Oh, you do. You really do. And so, yes, indeed. Why don't we take a look at some of your art?
All right.
And you can tell us a little bit about it.
I hand throw these bowls out of porcelain, and they're only. I like making little bowls, and you can't see the bottom of them. They're really heavy. I like a bowl to sit down that's solid.
Solid.
And then I use watercolor glazes, underglazes, and I actually paint them while they're not fired yet. They're thrown and they dry out, and then I paint on them. I fire them, and then I put a clear glaze on them.
Okay.
But the problem with it, sometimes if you get air bubbles, they would explode. So all that work you would do painting them would blow up. But I kind of laugh as my last name's Roach, so I finally found a good use of my last name. I make bug bowls.
That's great. That's great. Absolutely.
And everybody can use a bowl. I love bowls.
Bowls are wonderful.
Whenever I go out and see a ceramics person, I always buy a bowl. I really have more bowls than I ever will ever use.
You'll ever need.
It's one of my addictions.
Well, I tell you, they're wonderful, and I love your bowls. I think they're so unique. I love your designs. They're so
I try to make them fun. I try to make them fun.
I do love that. And something else that we could look at. There's another one of your pieces.
Okay,
That's awesome.
I started doing these textural things back at Sam Houston, and my ceramic teacher was always saying, they don't have enough form, or you're not finished, or what are you going to do with these? And I always struggled, and at one time I was making birds and making detachable wings, which I actually just went in my studio and made one of those to see if the gallery would do well in the gallery. So
that's cute.
That'd be something to look forward to. But they're really inspired by my grandmother's crazy quilts. Growing up in the Midwest, everybody knows how to sew to some degree, just out of necessity of patching work clothes or whatever. But she had these heavy quilts, and sometimes she would do embroidery, or sometimes she would just tie them. And I've always had that in my mind, and with my love of fabrics. The thing was, with sewing, if you sew something wrong, you have to, rip it out, and it takes some time. With clay, you just cut it out or whatever. And the one thing I love about clay, it's totally recyclable until you fire it. So if it dries out and you don't like it, you throw it away, add some water, re-wedge it, and you've got a new piece there.
Exactly. No waste.
And so I actually I have a slab roller, which is like a pasta roller, and it rolls out, and and then I put different textures, and you can actually use lace and fabric and that kind of stuff, which I have used. And then I just cut up squares, and I just start I start this way, and I've always loved the salvage edge of fabric. When you make garments.
I do too.
And so the top of my pots, I keep that raw edge when you roll it out. I just love that raw edge.
I love that too.
And so that's what inspires that part. And
I love your textures in there.
Well, and also what I do is when I make it, and before it gets hard leather, I take an anole, I actually carve on it as well.
Wow.
And then I have little pieces I add to it, and I'll use a bit of underglazes before I fire it, and then it comes out. I actually use a black oxide on it, and I stain it, because the white pieces are porcelain. Porcelain is a beautiful white, but I, for whatever reason, do not like white.
Okay.
And and by darkening it, makes them look a little more antique-ish.
It does.
Then the other little treat that I do in the bottom of all my pots, I melt glass.
Wow.
And so when you look inside it, you see these pretty colors of glass sparkling. And so I like every part of that. If you get tired of looking at one way, you can turn it, and you got a whole new piece.
I like that too, and I've seen your pieces at the gallery, and I just love them. And next time I go in there, I'm going to look in the
Please
bottom
do,
of them
please do.
because
It's a hidden treasure.
I have not seen the glass.
I mean,
in
I
there.
love mugs that people make, and there's something in the middle or something in the side. I like that extra little treat.
That is nice. It really is. It adds something very special. And then you told me that you had worked with stained glass before
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So,
And now I have friends. I have Lorraine. I can't think of her last name. Is an artist that works at the gallery, and she's starting to give me some of her little glass gifts. And
oh yes,
so
of course.
I'm
She
collaborating
does
with
lot
a
of
few.
that.
I mean, that's one thing great about working with artists. You start stealing ideas.
You do.
and materials, and I got to work in
Sure.
her studio, and looking at all the things I could possibly use to help.
Oh yes, that's wonderful. Yeah, she does some beautiful work too. That's fun. Yeah, and you've had a lot of experiences with a lot of different things. So
I have
you can
been very, very
incorporate
fortunate.
all of it together.
I do, and as I think I've mentioned, I think of art as puzzle pieces putting together, and
Right.
every piece you learned. I also mentioned I tat,
Yeah.
which is a lost art as well, and
These people might not know what tatting is. Tell
it's a
them
form
about
of.
it.
They actually did it on the coming across on the. Mayflower.
Mayflower?
Yep. And they were made out of bone, but the best one I found is from England, and it has a little crochet hook on the very end of it.
Right.
Most times they were just bone, and you'd have to get a little crochet hook to do your little thing. And it's just, I do edging. A lot of people can do my sister did baby bonnets, she did booties, she did Christmas ornaments, she did all kinds of crazy things. But I just do edging. I just
It's
sew on
kind
things.
of a lost art.
It is.
My grandmother did it, and I was always fascinated watching that little bobbin.
Well, and the good old timers would use a really fine thread. I use a pretty
yes.
thick cotton.
I don't know how they did it.
That's yeah.
Tiny little thread.
But the one thing nice about tanning too, when you make a mistake, you just cut it off and you start.
I like that. I like that.
it
And
is.
like you say, when you're sewing, it's not quite that simple to do. Well, do you have a current project that you're working on right now?
I'm working on my eagle, my detachable wings of eagles that I used to make. And
Okay.
I'd
That's
lost the pattern for
interesting.
making the wings, so I had to reconstruct how they go in and how much room, and so I'm.
Movable. Tell me a little bit
Well,
more about it.
I make as my vases go up, and
Uh-huh.
you have your bird and the big beak, and then I make slots on the side, and so I make a wing
The
that
wing
that claps
goes
in
into
there.
the slot. Okay.
And then
Now-
also I make two different colors on the wing, so therefore you can change the piece and make it interact. I really like making things interactive. that
I
you can
think
change your
that is
surrounds.
really fun. That
That's
sounds
challenging
great.
to me.
I think it would be wonderful.
I mean, most of the time you only look at thing one way. You don't really change
know.
it around because you have your favorite way. But I like the
Exactly.
possibility of it.
I agree with you. Yeah, a lot of change. Did we have one more piece that we?
Yeah,
Look at-
and this is one of
yes.
my working with green colors and just switching it around. And I always put a different color inside as well.
Oh wow.
And I have little holes. Sometimes I have little holes that come out of my pieces. And I have also weaved clay and put them on the outside.
Oh gosh, that's
So
so great.
I've done lots of little things, and I'm always interested in finding different things to put on. And I found a unique stamp that had a hand on it, and I thought that was really cool. So I've been incorporating that in my work, and I have a chicken form that I use on
Wow.
it. And I hated chickens growing up, and so it's nice to have them in a place where I don't have to feed or take care of them.
No, you don't. They're,
So-
they're controllable there, and
Yes,
you don't have to
exactly.
take care of them.
Exactly.
That's right. So, and you said you had, if people want to see your work, the best way to do it is.
Probably coming to the Conroe Art Gallery
Okay.
because I'm always I have two little in
You
the
have
cabinet.
shelves in the cabinet.
I always
where
have
we have
cabinets,
jewelry
and sometimes
yes.
I have a big piece out on the counter.
Oh, that's
And I
right.
occasionally have a watercolor hanging. It's just depending on how much time you got to do what.
Exactly. So you might have something on the wall and something in the jewelry cabinets at the same time.
I always
something
try to
else.
get something in the jewelry cabinet. I think you need to be consistent.
I think that's absolutely you do.
And I'm fairly proficient, whatever that word is.
Professional.
No,
proficiency?
I make a lot of things.
Oh, yes. You like a lot of variety.
I like
in
a lot
what
of variety.
You do.
Yes.
Yes, and you make a lot of different kinds of
I do.
things, and you're a very busy lady.
I am. I'm very busy.
And I have just your story is incredible.
Thank you.
And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
everyone has enjoyed hearing all about that.
Thank you
because
very much.
it's you've had a lot of variety in your life, and you're a very alive, vibrant woman, Carol. And I'm so happy that you are here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We really appreciate your being here, and we're going to look forward to your website soon. And when you do, you can have that on your cards when
Yes.
you're at the gallery, and that way
Yes.
people will be able to look at your work online as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And in order to see Carol's work, along with the other artists that then please visit us. We call the Best Little Art Gallery in historic downtown Conroe, and we're open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 until 4, and we're located at 127 Simonton Street. And we hope you'll join us at the gallery where we live by our creed, which is create, appreciate, and learn. Thanks for being here, folks.